enraged, desperate, yearning for change. Tens of thousands of people, mostly students, gathered in Bangkok for a month-long protest that began since February 2020. Their call: the resignation of Thailand's prime minister and reformations in the monarchy. But how did it come to this point? Hello everyone, I am Francisco C. Salvador Jr. and today we are going to learn about the monarchy of Thailand. Here are our objectives. First, examine the elements of statehood, focusing in Thailand and trace back Thailand's monarchical roots. Second, discuss how the Siamese Revolution led to the institutionalization of monarchical constitutionalism. Third, explain Thailand's form and system of governance as instituted by the 2017 Constitution. Fourth, analyze the role of military and military coups in Thai government. Fifth, discuss the 2017 constitutional mandate of various political institutions. And lastly, describe the current situation of Thailand and the state of its hybrid democracy. But before we delve right into the topic, let us take a look first if Thailand has all the elements of statehood. So basically, there are two theories regarding statehood. The first one is the declarative theory, and the second one is the constitutive theory. The declarative theory of statehood defines a state as a person in the international law. The constitutive theory, on the other hand, follows the idea that the recognition is most important for nationhood. This system states that for any nation to become a nation, it would need to be recognized by other nations. From the year 1880, the population in Thailand started to grow rapidly. So as of 2020, there are estimated 69.7 million inhabitants of Thailand. Secondly, Thailand is a defined territory with 1,430 islands, 76 provinces, and an area of about 500,000 kilometers square. Third, Thailand is a government with monarchical constitutionalism as a form of government and parliamentary system as a system of governance. Lastly, Thailand has always had its sovereignty even in the years of absolute monarchy, since it is the lone country in Southeast Asia who has not been colonized by the West. Plus, Thailand joined Association of Southeast Asian Nations in August 1967. Finally, Thailand has remained exceptional among modern states in Asia in that it has built and retained a culture around the traditional monarchical institution. The government of Thailand, or formerly the Royal Thai Government, is the unitary government of the Kingdom of Thailand. The country emerged as a modern nation-state after the foundation of the Shakri dynasty and the city of Bangkok in 1782. So clearly, Thailand obtains all the elements of statehood. With that, let's dig a little deeper to recognize the grassroots of its current political culture. The monarchy in Thailand can actually be traced back from 1238. It was founded by Sukhothai Kingdom and replaced by Shakri dynasty in 1782. The idea of this early kingship is based on two concepts derived from Hinduism and Buddhism. In Hinduism, the king is the warrior ruler who derives his powers from the military might. In Buddhism, the king should rule his people in accordance with Dharma, or the right way of living, and in the teachings of Buddha. The Thai political system relied on the monarchy as the basis for its legitimacy. The monarchy reigned and ruled and was revered with loyalty, love, respect, and religious faith of the Buddhist people. And it is also because of the political reforms enacted by the king that Thailand resisted the colonization of Europeans. The concept of nation-state, according to Evans, reinforces the state's claim over other sources of loyalty and power in civil society. This enables states to have significant autonomy, to formulate and pursue goals that do not even reflect the demands or interests of social groups, classes, or society. So the development of Thai nation state as an independent state having a non-liberal regime and a closed society with a dependent ethnic bourgeoisie is much more complex than the development of the nation state in the West. Because in the West, the idea of nation state and state power is more liberal and democratic, and it is always easy to relate the character of the regime to the identity of the state. However, in the case of Thailand, as Ruth McVie rightly pointed out, the ideological enthronement of the nation state was a matter between the king and the bureaucratic elite. The administrators could not mobilize the general public to their cause, and the king could neither rally them to his, because he had no means of reaching them through the bureaucratic apparatus. Practically, the monarch is not concerned with the general public because there were no direct means of bridging the gap between the monarch and the people. The modern nation-state in Thailand was created to centralize state power. Under the absolute monarchy, the nation-state was only a technical and administrative instrument of the regime. There was no need to build either a national identity or a state identity, since the identity of the nation-state or Shamrat was inseparable from the reigning monarch. So it is not surprising that the creation of state identity and nationalism in Thailand became a separate process from democratization. In fact, the bureaucratic and military elites always strive to establish, maintain, and reproduce a state identity that is separate from the society to escape being encompassed or limited by social forces. The creation of state identity is therefore like an artificial process intended to augment the capacity of the bureaucratic and military elites, that is, to prevent the growing forces in the civil society from controlling the state. It involves using the idioms and symbols of the state to legitimize its domination and self-empowerment. State identity building is directed by a state-creating class, which is called the official class. Their major interest and livelihood depend on the capacity of the state to manage and maintain its autonomy over the civil society. In the context of marginal countries, where both capitalist and proletariat classes are normally weak, the official class becomes the dominant intermediate class which seeks to utilize state power for its own purposes. It is the official class that has been striving to maintain its hegemony over civil society by utilizing various ideological and coercive methods. A bloodless democratic revolution took place in 1932, carried out by a group of military and civilian officials. King Prajatipok was forced to grant the country's first constitution, thereby ending the centuries of absolute monarchy. Because of that revolution, the institution was transformed into a constitutional monarchy. The 1932 revolution was led by the members of Thai elite, noted intellectuals, some European educated and disaffected army officers. They led the overthrow of the government of King Prachatipok in response to domestic issues as well as global political currents. The revolution brought the first temporary constitution, which stripped the king of his powers and then vested them not really in the people, but actually in the small group of promoters calling itself the People's Party. In effect, the temporary constitution was a party dictatorship cloaked under constitutional forms. Under constitutional rule, the state assumed a new character, and this changed the identity of the state. which, at least in theory, became inseparably linked with constitutionalism. The bureaucratic and military elites also rationalized and legitimized their newly acquired positions by means of this ideology. Now, because the official class loses its grip in control of the civil society, a new ruling class emerged. It developed gradually its own version of constitutional rule and formed a new state identity. This new state identity negated the principles of constitutionalism. It promotes centralization of state power and authoritarianism, resulting in a modern type of absolutism. More importantly, it drastically changed the identity of the nation, which had been pluralistic in nature, under the name of Siam. The identity of the nation and the state became homogeneous under the name of Thailand. Pibul, a Thai military officer and politician, served as the Prime Minister of Thailand and also a dictator from 1938 to 1957. Under Pibul's administration in the 1940s, a new brand of state identity and state building replaced constitutionalism with military statism. It was an extremely important project which dramatically changed the character of the emerging political order in Thailand. Looking back at the early 1940s, we can conclude that it was during this period that the identity of the state was created and served a number of functions for state building. According to Chayanand Samuda Vanija, a Thai political scientist and professor, these are the foundations for Thai state building. Number 1. It established hegemony of state power over civil society, especially vis-a-vis economic forces. Number 2. It strengthened and legitimized institutional power of the military in general, and the position of the army commander in particular. Number 3. It was the main instrument of state capital accumulation, resulting in the creation of a strong bureaucratic intermediate class. Number 4. It established a clear and concrete historical imaginary and a state ideology separate from the constitutional order to which citizens were obliged to sacrifice their freedom and liberty, both as individuals and as a group, to serve the imaginary identity. Number 5. It made a possible simultaneous application of social and political coercion to suppress and co-opt political challenges emanating from an economically powerful ethnic community by dispersing its cultural identity and solidarity, which otherwise would have been politically consolidated. Number 6. It regulated state-society relations through specific codes of conduct and legal measures which clearly defined political and economic boundaries. And number 7. It made possible integration of the state, the nation, the regime, and leadership into one imaginary entity above constitutionalism.